Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Abigail, starring Melissa Barrera, Dan Stevens, Catherine Newton, Will Catlett, Kevin Durant, Angus Cloud, Alicia Weir, Matthew Good, and Giancarlo Esposito, directed by Matt Bettinelli Olpin and Tyler Gillett, or Radio Silence for short. So, I have seen this movie earlier in the year in the theater, but I figured it was a good time to bring it up or review it when I got to the new Nosferatu, since I saw the trailer for it in front of the bike riders. So I'm glad I saved it for this. So let's get straight into the movie, shall we? Abigail, played by Alicia Weir, is a ballet dancer who dances to the music Swan Lake that was in the original Dracula, while Joey, played by Melissa Barrera, goes on a heist with some thieves like Frank, played by Dan Stevens, Rickles, played by Will Cartlett, Sammy, played by Catherine Newton, Peter, played by Kevin Durant, and Dean, played by Angus Cloud, as they break into the house where Abigail is staying at and kidnap her for ransom so her father could pay them up. And these are fun, relatable characters for a Dracula movie, despite their thieves. They take Abigail to a house while handcuffing her, as well as blindfolding the little girl, and we meet Lambert, played by Giancarlo Esposito, who's been in so many things I've seen him in and reviewed him in. And I always like his presence, as he takes all the cell phones away from the thieves and gives them 24 hours or 48 hours or something like that till the job is done. And we get to know the characters and for the whole movie, and that's part of the reason why I like these characters, as Dean doesn't read people right, but Joey can. And we'll hear about their real identities later in the movie and their backstories. Joey is read by Frank, and the dialogue is entertaining me, as this movie is very entertaining. Joey checks on Abigail and takes off her blindfold and loosens the handcuffs, as well as chats with her, and Peaky promises her, that's a big thing that they did in the ads too, that nobody's going to hurt her. And Abigail learns Joey has a little boy. She makes up a name, as she calls her kid Justin, and says to Joey she's sorry about what's going to happen to her. And Joey gets nervous about, as the rules of the job is no names whatsoever, and she doesn't give a fuck about who her father is, while Frank comes in and asks Abigail who her father is, and because she gets nervous about it, and she says Christophe Lazar is the name. And I'm thinking, come on, this is fucking Dracula. Stop lying to the audience. And just call her father motherfucking Dracula. As Frank decides to leave, and they talk about what the plan is, and the writing works for a vampire movie, and the acting in this is good from these actors. Joey looks around, and Rickles opens the door and says to her he doesn't trust any of these motherfuckers, as he wants to watch her back, and she wants to watch his, while Sammy watches Woody Woodpecker on the TV, as Dean scares the shit out of Sammy, and she ends up kicking his ass out of the room while drawing a dick on Peter's face. And this guy is the biggest fucking asshole in this whole movie, as he was my least favorite character in this whole movie, despite the actor did die as recent as when this movie came out. May he rest in peace. And it's sad to see him go in real life, but in the movie, he deserves the first death. And guess what? A few minutes later, he ends up killed as his head is decapitated. And Sammy looks around and sees his decapitated head, and she screams. And despite I've seen Catherine Newton in other movies, she can be the scream queen, as she screams and Peter hears it and calls the others and hears stories of Lazar's goons, or Dracula, come on, named Valdez, killing people in the past. And they check on Abigail, and Rickles decides to get out. And does it take them too long to guess, what she is in the trailers? As the trailers tell us right out the bat, Rickles tries to get out but the door is locked, and they try to break out, and Joey asks Abigail some questions about what her father does, and Frank tells Abigail to keep a secret or else he will kill her, as his name is Valdez. And Rickles talks with Joey, and they really got each other's backs until Rickles gets killed a minute later, and that was pretty damn graphic. Joey points the gun at Sammy as she finds Frank, and she knows Frank is Valdez and is bringing everyone there to kill them. And Peter goes upstairs to kill Abigail while Sammy breaks out. Well, she's Abigail breaking out of the cuffs because she's a goddamn vampire. And that reveal came 50 minutes into the movie, despite it was shown in the trailer. And that did kind of bug me, but not too badly, I'll say it best. They talk about how to kill a vampire while Peter overreacts to the situation. And Frank gets an idea on killing Abigail. They go upstairs and find Abigail doing some ballet, and she kicks their asses during this music of Swan Lake with Deed's body, which is funny to me as some of the material is hysterical in this movie. And she stabs Peter multiple times, but luckily doesn't kill him. As he was one of my favorite characters in this movie. And Kevin Durand, despite I've reviewed him in quite a few movies, is on a roll this year. With this film and Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes that I reviewed earlier this year, he's really good in both films. And Sammy gets an idea of splitting up and looking for Abigail around the house. And Sammy finds a pool filled with mud as well as dead bodies. And that scene was over the top, hilarious. And Abigail finds Peter and gets on his ass and locks her in and breaks out of it and does some ballet while going after him. And Frank's as she plays with her food like fucking crazy and bites Sammy as well as knocking Abigail out, as the movie is sometimes funny in the most over-the-top way possible. Abigail wakes up in a cage and she pulls off some bullshit like playing the part of a kid, and we hear Abigail brought them in. Sammy is known as Jessica, or Jessie for short. Peter is Terrence. Frank is former Detective Adam. And Joey is Anna, and she explains their backstory, and that was a good scene in the acting by Alicia Weir. And I don't know this actress as I will forever know her as the vampire, as she scares me, and she does a good job at scaring me. But I'm not going to call them by their actual names. I'm just going to call them by their fake names, which is what the movie's doing best. So let's move on. Peter points a gun at Joey, and Joey points a gun at Peter, and Peter gets shot at and is tied up while Frank is almost convinced she can get him the fuck out of the house if he lets her go until she breaks on her own, and Joey brings in some sunlight, which breaks Abigail's arm off and gets Frank out of there as he looks for the way out of the house. And I knew Abigail was bullshitting him while Joey tries to find a way out and is frustrated by it. And Sammy comforts her while Frank acts like an asshole about it, as Joey teams up with Frank and while Peter teams up with Sammy. And this is getting a little bit corny at this point. Sammy turns into a vampire and attacks and bites Peter and kills him off, which wasn't a death I wanted coming, but he kind of deserved it, as Sammy acts like Abigail as a ballerina, which wasn't a little funny in an over-the-top way, and the way they put the makeup on Catherine Newton was good. And because of sunlight, she explodes like in the movie Ready or Not. And I think that's what these explosions I couldn't help but reminded me of, which was a choice made by these directors. And I have seen that movie Ready or Not. I'll get there one day, and I'll give them one more time with this movie. But after that, please knock that shit off while Joey and Frank go behind this bookcase and encounters Lambert as he works for Abigail. He works for Abigail as he was turned into a damn vampire 2 years ago, and makes a deal for Frank to become a vampire. And he accepts it while Lambert knocks Joey out, and she wakes up as Frank kills Lambert, and the effects are good in the most over-the-top way possible. Abigail enters the room, and we learn she's not the villain of the movie, as it's Frank, as he bites Abigail, and I didn't see that coming while Joey tries to get out and call his son Justin, or his real name is Caleb, and says to him she loves him and she's proud of him. And he's the best thing she ever did until Frank comes in and tries to attack Joey and throws her all over the place until Abigail fights aside her. And she says she'll let her go if she helps defeat Frank, while she's too weak to fight him alone. And Abigail and Joey get thrown around continuously, and they keep fighting until Frank is stabbed by a crucifix, and explodes one more time, and the fight is over as Abigail lets Joey go, and her father, I'm just gonna say it, Dracula, played by Matthew Good. They never say his name, but he says the line. What was the line? Oh yeah, that he goes by many names. Almost doesn't let her go, and he almost bites her, but she says to him she saved her life, and Dracula decides to let her go and leaves while having the lollipops she's been sucking on for half the movie. And the climax was funny in a fun way, but this wouldn't be a movie I would own on 4K, but I was entertained enough to watch on streaming at some points. But how entertained was I? Let's get to the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.5 out of 10. I like the characters as they are fun, relatable characters for a Dracula movie despite their thieves, and the whole movie made me think, despite they never say it, but the father is fucking Dracula. I mean, they never say it, but I mean, come on, it's that obvious. But I was entertained as the movie was entertaining from start to finish. The writing works for a vampire movie, and the acting is good from these actors. And sometimes this movie is funny, and in a way, it's hysterical. While it gets over the top. And this is so far maybe the best Dracula movie, in my opinion. I had a great time with this movie. We'll see how the new Nosferatu goes. But I had a great time with this movie in theaters, as well as a few more times of viewing this movie in the past, and a couple more times for this review. And this movie works good, and it can get clever at times. It's fun for damn sure, while it's corny, like the dance Catherine Newton is as a vampire, which did make me laugh, excuse me. And the makeup effects on her was good, and the explosion of the vampire reminded me of the end of Ready or Not. And I'll get there one day as far as the effects goes. I'll give them that movie and this, but after that, knock that shit off. But otherwise, this is a recommendation for this movie, as I would recommend people checking this movie out, as this isn't what you expect from a vampire movie, especially a Dracula movie. So I would like to thank you guys for joining me, and I'll be back in maybe a couple of hours in not the new Nosferatu, but Nosferatu, A Symphony of Horror from 2023. And until then, I am Dracula, and I will suck your blood.